Well, hello and welcome to today's show. Today is going to be a little bit confusing, I'm afraid, because we were ventilating the well house and then we insulated the well house in between getting intake and exhaust because we had leakage, and we put a door sweep on. Then we reworked a controller. What I want to focus on this show is the actual cutting the vents in and out of the well house, if you don't mind. Because it's a insulated block building, and we've got to do some hole sawing. So I'll start with maybe in this section while you still see me in this outfit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools after we roll the intro, and then we'll go back and look at some footage that was recorded. And it's maybe mentioning other projects that, because of the length of them, we're going to separate out. But let's get started. Now I have a section where we talk about going through the block. I don't know how much of that I'll cut up for you as far as where to put a hole saw, a couple of tools that we will need, and I don't think this shows up well enough on the focus, but these are masonry bits. They have a little carbide tip on them. My initial location, desired location for the intake and exhaust were ideal. Upper left as you look at the door of the well house, and then down bottom right, because we want to pull catty cornered or kitty corner depending on where you're from, and that gets a good ventilation through there. The problem was I almost cut the inside hole, and then I realized I'm going to mess up my wooden drip little ledge on the front over my door, and I didn't really want to do that, so I changed it 90 degrees and went high right and intake low left. And I don't really like the low left because it puts the intake where potentially we could have leakage or cold air pulled in is going to come right next to the tanks. Now that's better because of maybe the moisture take up. If we're wet, it's going to pull air from that section of the well house diagonally up and out, and that was an easier place to put the fan. The problem was it was almost impossible to get it in that second row from the top. I eventually did that after seeing I was going to have a conflict on the front of the well house face up high with my little drip ledge, and I had to sacrifice one of my most favoritist masonry drill bits. I know it's probably irrationally emotionally connected to a drill bit, but this was my favorite drill. It drilled a lot of holes in its life before I ground it in half and got it short enough, because you will need a drill motor, right? And this one is, let me pull it back toward me and to the side. This is DeWalt hammer drill. You'll need a hammer drill with a masonry bit. And of course I did my attachments with some, this is not a particular brand. These are just kind of anchors, and I used them because they're free and I have them in a junk drawer, and I didn't throw them away when I had other projects. And they're about the right size for those tiny holes in the plastic. Now we end up having to cut out, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but see, this is the plug that the hole saw cut out, and it's 1.25 inches. Let me look in my magic box of, I don't know if you can tell. I brought this up with me so I could maybe get it closer to you. I don't know if you can tell. There's probably a couple $100 worth of hole saws in that little box, because every one you get, you got to buy a new one. Now, this is a good, gravity. This is a real good one I got from Lowe's. It's a 4-tooth job. Very nice. This one I had to use to cut for a light in hardy board, and it's a nice one. I think that's about $40. We can get these for wood. You see the difference in the teeth if you're not familiar with this. Again, like I say, you might not want to be drilling holes inside of a block building if you don't know at least this much about tools, but these are for wood. And as you saw, the teeth on this one, let me get closer to it. You see how they're carbide teeth up here? This is a Spider brand. You see we got 4 of the carbide teeth. It's too small. We needed a 4.5 because this is a dryer size vent, and we're using dryer stuff as far as louvers and automatic shuts and screens and anti-rodent stuff. But this one we got from where is it? This Hercules. This is from Harbor Freight. It's about half price of a Hercules. This one is 4.5. It only has 3 of the carbide tips. Let me get it close. There we go. And it does a pretty good job, quite honestly. Just want to show you that. And I did cut it with a hammer drill, and it worked pretty good. Now, this is the size of the plug. You can see about how thick that block was. Yeah, so you're going to have some tools to do this with. And these are just a few of them, you know, levels and caulking guns and screwdrivers and all that other stuff. See the top couple blocks, it'd be good to tuck it underneath the eave right there, the way that rake comes down. The problem is I can't get the drill motor in there to cut the hole, so that doesn't work. So that means it's going to have to be the front or the back. Now I'm on the inside, and we see the spot up above, right? See where that blue tape is? That block where that blue tape is where I want to ideally put the exhaust. Now the question is, we've got a door there. What are we doing about that? Because that could mess up how they laid that block. Let's go outside and look. Now here's where a complication might come in. Now you see what we have on the edges here. These are finished blocks because we expect the face of the block to be finished. But when we have a corner, we have the ends of the blocks are finished as well. They're flat, and that helps us with a nice corner. Now if we come over here to this pile, you see the normal end on a run of brick is hollow. We got the little space there. It's not finished. Now the little brick ledge block down below it, see, it's finished on the edge. So we got a smooth edge. And you think, what difference does that make? Well, if I'm trying to drill in a space, I need hit space. I'd rather not hit that web. We've got a situation where we've got that one block because it comes up against the door, and we only have a partial block and we've got it sawed off. The question is, which way is the half they cut off, which actually would be more like a third, but what is the cutoff piece? Are we facing? Let's look at this. Normally, we will lay, because there's a door going in, if we know there's a door going in, we'll put a finished block on this side so that we'll have, like on this bottom row, we've got 16 inches across here twice, right? So what we might do is we put a finished in on this side and a finished in on that side because we would have like a door frame going here. Now when we cut off a block like this, we would cut off, leave the finish in here and be somewhere in the middle, and that wouldn't matter because we're in this space. But up here we've got a little different dimension. How do we do it up here? Let me show you what I came up with. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. All right, now I've got a little bit of a gap, so I made a feeler. And what I want to do is I want to find out if this block is oriented here, where this is a finished end, because we had a door frame going up against it, and whether or not I have a web here. If it's turned around correct where I had the end, just a regular block this side, I would have a web somewhere around here underneath this one and above that one. So this would be where the blue tape is, would be the hollow spot. Is it that way, or is it a block with a finished edge that's cut? This side's the cutoff and it's pointed that way. We don't know. So I tried to use one of those ultrasound type devices, stud finder. It was useless in this case. So what I did was I measured out where that web should be. If we're coming off this side or coming off this side is the end that hasn't been sawed. Now I drilled a small hole here to see if I hit concrete all the way through, which would indicate I have it in the web there, or whether or not the web is going to be where the blue is, in which case I can put a hole straight through where you see that tiny one, that little probe hole.
Well, except for somehow somebody cut his elbow while drilling the hole. We now have our hole in there. We've got our duct passed in. It's completely finished. We just need to put the fan on. We've made a template. Hopefully we can hit the holes without them wallowing too far, drifting. We'll find out.
Well, here is our pass-through for our intake. We have a louver for the inside, and this one starts to look gray as soon as I get it home. This is a dryer bit we ordered off of Amazon. We can pull this out, and they've got a screen in there. I don't know if I can see it there. You can see it a little bit. And that'll keep the bugs and the mice and the mythical creatures of Mordor from crawling through the hole. So we have that. And here we see, let me get that there. Around that light is the first. All right, let me interrupt myself briefly because on these templates, the verbiage is lost between the sequence because some of the sequences are cut. What I did is I took the initial hole that I wanted to lay out, that brown paper one, the one that's around that par light, and I used it to figure out about how far from the end that I needed the hole to be for the fan so that I wouldn't be too high or too low or too close to the end or the web. And so that gave me a measurement. I then took that measurement off of that and made a little bit of a cardstock, that white paper that you see, made a cardstock version of a template so that I could go top of the block, into the block, back toward the other direction with my 4 holes, made my center X, and then used one of the small masonry bits to locate it in, through that hole. Then when I did the other hole from the other side, I just took that same piece of paper and laid it out on the other. There may be a little bit of misalignment, but it's not much. And that's how I got it to go, drill this hole and then this one over here and not have it, way down here like that. Then on the fan, that's a completely different template I made up where I laid that boxer fan on the cardstock and went around with a pin. I drilled a hole kind of circle in the inside of it and put my holes for the 4 screws. And I actually managed to hit that. To make this one so that we could do like we did in the previous video. This is a little different one. We have, I don't know if that's the right place to put it or not, but that's where I put a hole right through that block. Because theory is if we have a leak, it's probably going to be here, leaking down to the floor drain. And in that regard, this is probably where the most water will be. And I want the vent to come up here. Now, I don't really like the intake in proximity to the pipes and the tanks. But we haven't broken the tank before. We've had a much leakier building than this. We've added extra on the top. The only other option was we could have put it here. And I thought about that. Or under here. This was the ideal place if I had placed it up in that corner where we see a little gray spot. And it was great on this side, and we found it out. But when we came to this side, we'd have to cut out part of my little drip ledge right there. And I didn't really want to do that. I thought, where could I put it? So we located it there. Well, you see what we did? We've made our holes ready for our anchors. And of course, we took some blue tape, put it on there because, that old dirty looking wall is going to be hard to see where our pencil marks are. So we try to get them as best we can. Hopefully they're going to be close enough for government work. Well, it's installed, and guess what? That wall's still dirty. Well, there we are on the outside. We got her done. It's siliconed around it. It looks a little crooked. I did use a level. But when you're lining up holes that small, even the best you can to mark them, they're still likely not going to be right. So at least we got 4 of them in there. Now, would I do it again? Probably not. Because what I got going on here is now I've put a hole in the block wall. There's a chance that water can get past that screen if it's blowing hard enough and get in that block and potentially freeze and cause me a problem. But when all is said and done, you can see we barely have that open. And that's all that's doing is taking care of the balance of the air that's not pulling from wherever it's leaking from. So I don't know if it's really worth taking a risk on the hole or not. Either way, it's done now. Well, that's it. I appreciate you watching. Do, if you don't mind, the click, like, and subscribe type thing. The comment, drop a comment on me. The subscribing bit does help the algorithms find me, and it promotes my content. So if any of this kind of stuff, it may be a little bit baby to you as far as drilling a hole through the concrete block in the tool section, but maybe it helps somebody. Anyway, we'll see you next time. And remember, drink better coffee if you can. See ya.